Let's take you to Ryan Bohl, who's a senior Middle East and North Africa analyst at RANE. He joins us from Philadelphia in Pennsylvania. I just want to get your thoughts as we see these images from Tel Aviv.
Well, this is an escalation from the Iranian side that is matching the escalation from the Israelis. It is a city-for-city response. Israel's its de facto capital for many is Tel Aviv. So after Israel hit Tehran, I think that these targets selected within Tel Aviv were chosen as a proportional response, at least in the Iranian mind, for those strikes within Iran. And this does suggest that, at least for now, Iran is not going to be the one that's going to expand the escalation ladder, that they will respond to what Israel strikes with proportional strikes. But, you know, the night is still relatively young. There are more waves of missiles coming. And depending on the targets that Iran chooses, that'll give us insight into whether or not Tehran is choosing a path of strategic pragmatism, where they respond to what the Israelis are doing, or it could be strategic escalation, where they're choosing new targets outside of what the Israelis have targeted inside of Iran itself.
And Ryan, that's an important point, because there are reports of Iranian missiles hitting the Israeli Ministry of Defense itself, and that's on our screens right now for our viewers. How important is that, on that point that you made about the choice of strikes?
Yes, exactly. It's critical to understand that this is probably in retaliation for the Israeli assassinations of top IRGC leadership and strikes on their command structure, especially in Tehran itself. So this is their response to that. Now, Iranian ballistic missiles aren't as accurate as Israeli air-to-surface weapons that were used against Iran, and Iran knows that. So firing into Tel Aviv, which is a populated civilian area, inevitably risks civilians in a way that's different from Israeli airstrikes. But for Iran's political calculation, its strategic deterrence calculations, it is demonstrating that this is the response to Israeli behavior, and that if Israel escalates, it will continue to follow that escalation and match it.
And on that point, there have been sirens also in northern Israel, including Haifa as well. So clearly across many different areas of the country. And Ryan, of course, you're speaking to us from the US. What is the US's role in all of this, on the strikes that happened by Israel on Tehran, on Iran in the early hours of yesterday, and on what we're seeing right now?
Well, certainly these strikes had the approval of the Trump administration. If there was any divergence between the two before the strikes, they are closed now. Trump is taking credit for these strikes. He's saying they're great. He's saying that they are an incentive for Iran to get back to the nuclear talks and offer serious concessions. So at this point, there's not much daylight between the U.S. and Israel on this. The U.S. probably provided some intelligence. It is very likely involved in some interceptions of drones and missiles being fired from Iran. So it will remain in that defensive position as it did under the Biden administration to protect Israel's airspace. But that being said, the United States does not want to get involved in this war. They do not want to become an offensive power, and they certainly don't want to provoke the Iranians into striking America's many bases throughout the region. And so what that will mean is that they will send intense signaling to Iran that they will leave Iran alone in terms of counterstrikes so long as Iran leaves them alone. That's an unstable dynamic. It's not clear if the United States or Tehran are going to be able to make promises to each other on those calculations, be able to keep them. For example, as Tel Aviv continuously is struck by ballistic missiles, there are many Americans that live in Israel, and President Trump could take it as a serious provocation if one of them is injured or killed and decide to respond to that. For that matter, the Iranian political leadership may decide that the United States' role in these strikes is too significant to ignore, and that they need to carry out at least some kind of regional attack, perhaps against an embassy, perhaps against a regional military base in a country like Iraq, in order to respond to America's role supporting Israel through this campaign.
And Ryan, what happened to diplomacy? What happened to all those nuclear talks that, of course, there was another round set to happen this Sunday in Oman? How strong how impactful was that mediation by Witkoff, who of course was leading that diplomacy? Where did the negotiations go wrong?
Well, essentially, they hit a wall, and President Trump set this deadline, and it's somewhat on the administration's own responsibility that they've set many deadlines that they don't keep. But this is one deadline that they decided to keep, the 60 days for Iran to offer concessions. And then we passed that 60-day mark, and Iran, because of the administration's track record on deadlines, perhaps didn't take it terribly seriously. But Israel certainly did, and the Trump administration ended up backing the Israelis on that front. Trump is not abandoning diplomacy. He believes it can still be achieved even under fire. He believes he can still cut a deal with the Iranians, even as Israel and Iran are now in more or less open warfare. He thinks he can end this conflict. I tend to think that is a miscalculation. The Iranians will not be interested in diplomacy anytime soon. But the Trump administration has shown time and time again that they are willing to escalate to de-escalate, and that they are willing to allow major escalations to break stale dynamics in an attempt to, shake things up. I, again, tend to think that is a miscalculation in this course. The Iranians are going to become more nationalist and more hardline and more likely to develop a nuclear weapon as a result of these strikes. But that certainly is what the calculation is out of D.C.
Fantastic to speak to you, Ryan. Thank you very much indeed. Ryan Bohl, Senior Middle East and North Africa Analyst at RANE, speaking to us there from Pennsylvania.